Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're following this CTO Power Panel out there on the World Wide Web. We're at day 2, just to situate us. Cloud Expo, 9th Cloud Expo. Some of these CTOs have been to all 9 Cloud Expos, I'll have you know. I won't reveal which, they might want to tell you themselves. Let's find out who we've got to dissect cloud computing today, starting with Rich on my far left.
Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Rich Wolski. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Eucalyptus Systems. We're an open source infrastructure as a service cloud platform company that was founded in Santa Barbara, California, and I'm very pleased to be here today.
And number 2, Sheng, please.
Yeah, I'm Sheng Liang. I'm the CTO of Cloud Platforms at Citrix Systems, right across the street. It's great to be here. I joined Citrix just 3 months ago with the acquisition of Cloud.com, where I was the CEO. And Cloud.com and Citrix, now we make software to enable cloud service providers and enterprises launch cloud services.
Vineet, please.
Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the Cloud Expo. I'm Vineet Tyagi. I'm head of Innovation Labs with a product engineering company called Impetus. We develop our own products on cloud, big data, and mobile technologies, and also help others, sort of de-risk some of their endeavors on those technologies.
Rick hardly needs introduction, but he's going to introduce himself.
Hello, Rick Nucci, Dell Boomi CTO. Boomi provides a integration cloud, so we help enterprises that are moving to the cloud solve the problem of application and data integration. And we were acquired by Dell a week ago, last week actually. So we've now been a part of Dell and are a key part of their cloud strategy going forward.
Okay, we have a running theme here. These are people who are being acquired because of Cloud Expo. Paulo, please.
I'm Paulo Rosado. I'm the CEO of OutSystems. We provide a platform as a service, high productivity platform for building and migrating applications to the cloud in a very, very productive way. And we target mid to large organizations.
Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hobbs, the CTO of ActiveState software. We've been around for a dozen years, mostly known for the dynamic languages. And we have a private platform as a service solution, which sounds kind of similar here, targeting migrating existing applications as well as creating new applications across the language and frameworks that are common in large enterprises.
Brian?
So I'm the one, circle the one that doesn't belong. I'm not a CTO, I'm a CIO, but focus internal and external. So my name is Brian Lillie. I'm the CIO of Equinix. And we get the opportunity to work with some of the best and brightest minds as we house most of the cloud providers and work very closely with them. We're also have a fairly significant internal cloud based on VMware, but we're looking and working with companies like RightScale and Citrix and VMware, et cetera, but we're looking at how can we integrate private and public clouds and sort of achieve a hybrid cloud.
Okay, now he's apologizing that he's a C-suite guy. That's all we need. We need thoughtful, insightful people on panels. It's lunchtime. We need to wake up this room. And obviously, the simplest way to wake up this room is to remind them the title of this panel is Has Cloud Computing Changed IT for the Better? So the first question, has cloud computing changed IT for the better, Rick?
It's changed it for the faster.
Oh, I love that answer.
And faster is not necessarily better, at least not always at the beginning, although my personal opinion is that in this case it is. One of the things that cloud computing is really doing that we all think about is enabling self-service. And that's a streamlining process that makes things go faster. The business cycle or policy cycle that you have to go through is a lot shorter with cloud computing. But it's also done something that I think we don't talk enough about, and that is through elasticity, it's made things much more fluid. You can move workloads or repurpose workloads to different pieces of hardware, different hypervisors, different cost points in your data center much more quickly. And that speed ultimately is, I think, where the cost savings is going to come. And cost savings is good. So yes, it has changed things for them.
Cost savings is good. Okay, so there's a positive answer. Another positive answer.
Absolutely, it has changed it for the better.
There you are.
Unequivocally, yes. So I think Rich talked about saving cost, but to me, really more importantly is not just saving cost, but the agility cloud computing brings into the enterprise. You know, for the longest time, enterprises know that internet companies have been running IT, their internal operation, a little bit differently, and these operations not only tend to be cheaper to achieve the same amount of computation, but these companies just seem to be able to innovate much faster. And I think that's the big eye-opener, you know, for us, for Citrix, is as we are selling to those internet companies, we realized we could actually take a lot of that learning and package it up as software, and then deploy it inside the enterprise to make enterprise IT perform more efficiently and be more agile as well.
Very positive, aren't they? Very upbeat. Do you think they've got skin in the game? Vineet?
I think it's not only changed for the better, it's still changing for the better, for the best. There's scope to even change, and there are dramatic changes which are happening. For me, it's 3 changes that we are focusing on. One is the fact that, you know, it's democratizing IT.
Oh.
You know, accessibility of, you know, different economic models, you know, OpEx, CapEx, you know, things that we all know of, what the benefits of that are. So it's making the access of software which was not available to smaller, medium enterprises earlier. It's giving them access to these richer, efficient tools. The second thing it's changing is the biggest use case for cloud computing is big data, as we keep hearing. And that's what we are seeing, that it's going to change for the best in the coming 2, 3, 4 years now. As more and more people start using cloud computing, the elasticity, the agility of provisioning, as Sheng said, you know, is going to drive the adoption of big data solutions in the enterprise. The third thing, what I think is going to change in the future is as enterprises adopt, you know, infrastructure as a service related elasticity, there's going to be platforms, software custom built platforms within enterprises for building and standardizing their applications which are going to emerge. So there's a lot of scope for change. It's definitely changing for better.
So it's changing for the better. The best is still to come. It's all exciting. Rick?
Can I be negative, or am I going to bring down
I
the
think
mood?
it would be a splendid thing for somebody to prick the balloon of these 3 with their unadulterated optimism.
As a percentage spend of IT, if you look at it that way, no, it really hasn't made IT better. I think that it holds great promise, and I think that cloud gives us the opportunity and the fundamentals to solve some really age-old problems that really haven't been solved in the past. But I think we're at a really important time right now where the notion of cloud washing is sort of pervasive throughout the industry, and if anyone doesn't know what that term means, it means you take the same old stuff that used to run in your data center and now you put it in a different place and call it cloud. And if that happens, we're missing the point, and I think we're not really getting at any sort of real fundamental value potential. And I think that we would look back on this industry in a few years and go, what a shame, it could have been so much more. So there's my gloom and doom.
So we'll hold that thought.
Know.
So it's not that it's not promising, it's that cloud washing is in there as kind of screwing things up. Okay, Paulo.
Well, one of the things is that I don't think it made, at least in the short time, life of IT professionals more relaxing.
No, it didn't.
I think what's happening is that the self-service mode has created, has basically increased by an order of magnitude the process of business going rogue and creating and moving outside without the control of IT departments. And fundamentally, they're doing this because the pain that they feel in terms, when related to IT, the fact that IT doesn't deliver on time, it takes too long, those things are not going away with the cloud, especially not with the infrastructure, cloud as an infrastructure, and will take time until they get there. So until actually IT changes, starts acknowledging they really have a problem. They always had a problem, but now with the cloud sprawl and things moving out, they really have an issue with liability, data moving out, and things like that. And until they acknowledge that they need to curb that problem, they don't have enough pressure to go back and become more efficient, because that's the reason why business goes outside. So I think what IT is coming now is they're looking into it. They have a liability problem of data migrating outside. They still have lack of capacity of response. They're still slow. People are still moving out. But they have a huge pressure because now they need to move on. And so I think cloud is good, is going to be good, but as a pressure mechanism. Is that going to make life of IT professionals more relaxing? No, it's not.
Okay,
and it's not.
So it's not. Cloud Nirvana is around the corner. Jeff?
Yeah, I think I would say at the moment it's really a mixed bag. You are able to do more with less now. But to the system administrator who was dealing with 100 machines last year and he's dealing with 1,000 machines this year, though virtualized, it's great for the business level, but it's not actually as good for the IT administrator who is still usually just the one guy dealing with 10 times more virtualized resources. The further issue that you hit with this is that you have 10 times more systems to worry about security implications. And as well as developers that if you want to give them access to these systems, well, then you can handle more applications on these systems. Each one of those is going to come with its own security implications. So has it really changed it for the better? It's certainly allowed for an explosion in potential. But at the moment, it's at a tipping point because there are certainly known security issues out there and nothing's really been addressed with that. There's a lot more possibilities you can open up with cloud computing, but it even has more questions relating to it.
Okay, I make that so far kind of 3 optimists, 3 realists stroke, not quite pessimists, but we're kind of even, which gives you not quite the deciding vote, but Mr. CIO, come on.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it depends on the role that you're looking at. If you're looking at it from a service provider view, I think the service providers, this is a new way for them to offer their services, and they can capitalize on that. I think there's opportunity in adding more customers with adding not the same amount of resources on the cost side, but I also think the negative and the difficulty for an SP trying to provide the service is they have to plan a lot better, and they're planning across a landscape that's very, very difficult, which is why scaling, services, again, I'll use a right scale, allows you to capture that wave as it takes off. So that's an SP side. Now, if you're an IT guy, I was 6'2" and a full head of hair before cloud started, so it's been rough. But I think that there's a couple things. One is internal clouds have made life better. So just let's look at it as an internal private cloud has made it better. It's made it faster. I believe more on the agility side than the cost side because we still are buying, kit to build up a cloud infrastructure. So the cost is, but the speed is just incredible. We could not grow. We've tripled our company in 3 years. You couldn't have done that deploying the apps, deploying the services in sort of the one app, one machine world. When you get to the public cloud and the ease of which a CIO can use that, it's not easy. It's a bit of a science project because you've got dev, test, UAT, production, pilot, you've got load balancers and storage and networks that you got to configure, and you got to push data around. So this whole thing about the promise, totally agree, but making that seamless between private and public, it's just not there yet. And so it's still a bit of an engineering project to really make it seamless.
All right, well, we'll go further into that. I'm just going to pass that. So it seems to me, so Rick planted the seed that it may not make it better, but it makes it faster. And that kind of lasted to the end of the line, sort of via a few circuits to actually, that has helped us as a company. So is it true then, this idea, think big, start small, scale fast, that meme sort of survived the line, Rick? Sheng, I like what you said though, this unleashing side of the cloud, the unleashing the business side, right? You're convinced, that's why cloud.com got acquired, you're convinced that you're onto something, that you were onto it before anybody else. So I want to just put you on the spot. Just elaborate a little bit more on that. What is it about cloud computing that has helped business so much? Because you guys are CTOs, you're technical guys, but it's really business that it's impacted.
Yeah, absolutely. No, by the way, I think Eucalyptus was also onto it about the same time.
You're very gracious.
So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it does boil down to the impact on the business. And one of the things that we increasingly are talking to the customer about is you sort of the traditional way of selling IT. You try to give a return on investment analysis, and you try to give a TCO analysis. And that's actually quite difficult to do in many cases for the cloud. Primarily because if you want to build a private cloud, there's quite a bit of upfront capital investment. And if you try to go to a public cloud, in most cases you got to worry about a lot of the security and compliance issues. But what we increasingly see is our customers make a value argument. It's basically at the end of the day enabling a set of activities, business activities they weren't able to even attempt before they deploy the cloud. And that's what our CEO, Mark Templeton, calls it, the total value of ownership. And I think that's really gaining a lot of attention amongst the CIOs.
Right, and it's, our old friend, like time to opportunity and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
There's a streamlining factor here, though. I mean, there's the agility factor, which is you can do different things more quickly, but then you can also do the things that you were doing before faster and more efficiently. I'll just tell you a story. When we started Eucalyptus, I went to visit as a researcher a big company, and they said they wanted to put 16 servers on the ground to roll out a new SaaS product. And start to finish, from the time the developers had finished the coding until the servers hit the data center floor, was 7 months. Now, it's not only that you're not in the market with your product for 7 months, right? That opportunity cost is lost. Think about all the people in between that impetus and the actual fielding of the software that were doing something just to get 16 servers on the floor in 7 months. And that's now a 5-minute operation. Time is money, right? And this being able to do different things faster, being able to do what you are doing today faster, more effectively, more accurately, right? In a way that you can audit better are all things that are really improving the business process here.
Rick, let's put you on the spot next, seeing as you mentioned cloud washing, and yet there you are, everything is going well for Dell Boomi. So question here for you. Terminology clearly matters. It clearly matters to you. How are we going to avoid cloud washing? How do you, knowing the technical value of real cloud computing, what is the answer? How can you distinguish yourself from somebody who just says, yeah, well, I can say cloud. He said cloud. He said cloud, company got bored. You were doing cloud, you got bored. I'm just going to say cloud, I'll get bored. How do you address that? It must be very frustrating.
Well, the good news is that people who cloud wash can't do a lot of the things that the actual real cloud guys can. And so,
they'll be busted at some point.
They're busted, right. And it does take a little bit of a savvy buyer to sort of expose it, but a couple of points around time to value. Completely agree, that's the fundamental benefit, time to value of the entire solution from infrastructure up to the business app. That's really the whole key. And so even while you're evaluating or experimenting with an app, how long does it take to prove something out, right? And the cloud washers will do some wizardry, under the curtain, and they'll set up this dedicated instance just for you. And so it sort of has a thin veil of fast time to value. But if you dig in a little bit and then you go to the next layer and the next answer to your question, which is customer success, so getting customers to talk about ongoing value they've received from the platform, that's something that you'll hear their messages come through. You'll hear them talk about, I did that thing and it took me 2 days, and the other solution, it took them 2 weeks just to get me access. And you'll start to hear those things trickle out, and it becomes really important because, what's dangerous is if you don't pierce that thin veil, then what's happening is the cloud washer is creating a problem that doesn't necessarily exist today, but when they've got 1,000 customers and they need to release the next version of their software and they have to do 1,000 individual releases, that's just one example, they're in this really, really bad sort of scale problem, and all those poor customers that bought into that are going, uh-oh, like now what do I do?
I wonder if there's a business does anyone own cloudwashing.com and you can kind of shock people? Tweet cloudwashing.com and shame them. Somebody must own it. I will find out who owns it. I'll report this evening who owns cloudwashing.com. Paulo, so Rick has kind of solved some of what you were saying, some of those concerns, that the value of all of this, it will be not carved out in stone, but it'll be identified, and you don't have to worry so much. The value of cloud is going to be taken care of.
I think it's what Brian said. You need to look at the layers that we're talking about here. And from an infrastructural point of view, we see a lot of examples every day of the way the cloud really is putting the right pressure on IT, especially at the infrastructure side. We're talking about servers and things like that. Those things are marvelous.
So you see it almost as a change agent. For you, it's a change agent.
No, for us, it's an enabler, a change agent. The thing is, now comes, that thing only solves the bottom layer of the issues. I mean, the fundamental issues, when you come back to the KPI, why IT exists, which is to serve the business quickly, fast, and that piece, that little piece that we're adding with these first layers of cloud, it's helping a lot, definitely. But there's a series of other problems where the cloud can be a catalyst, some of the enablers, but it's not there. And if you think, for instance, of the fundamental issue, which is getting rid of the backlog of requirements that fast business changings are requiring on IT to integrate into their apps, that particular thing, the cloud, for instance, is bringing features that help that, like one-click deployment, like making a change, having the testing processes all integrated into the staging, having the staging integrated. All of those things help compress the change cycle. But there's a lot of things that are not related to the cloud. The cloud is just, we're just fixing a piece of the problem. There's a lot of other issues that still hamper that fast turnaround cycle that IT needs to do so that business stops having a reason to go outside and doing things itself. Okay, and that I think is the new challenge. Is the challenge that's coming after we fix all these
All right,
issues.
I'm sure we're not going to be short of new challenges. I can't help noticing we've got to this stage, however very minutes, and it's all good, or it's maybe half good, or it's going to get better. But none of you actually mentioned the S word. So I'm wondering what's going on with security and why it's not being mentioned on this CTO power panel. So I'm going to ask this question in a reverse way. Why have we not yet talked about security? I was not going to be the first one to say it. So you see how long we would go. So, I mean, there are 160 sessions, I think, this week. I mean, about 170 of them are security-oriented. So what's going on? Why are you keeping so mum? Is it because we've cracked it?
I think there's
free for all now. Free for all.
Okay, no, I just from my perspective. So we're a big advocate of the cloud. We use many SaaS apps, from Workday to Salesforce to ServiceNow to Taleo to et cetera. I can name a bunch that we're using with sensitive data. And I think from a CIO's perspective, you're going to have the same conversations with them that you have if you were running it internally. And frankly, I think that it's a little bit of a red herring. I think that this is what these SPs do for a living. And when you look at the services that they're providing, the security services that they're providing, it's as strong, or in some cases stronger, than enterprises provide. So for me personally, it's an independent choice. Not all clouds are created equal, and you need to do your due diligence. But I do believe that you can secure data and information and applications and storage in the cloud as well as you can in an enterprise, in many ways better.
All right, so let's be clear. You're not saying it's a red herring, the security thing. It's a red herring that it's unsolved, or that it's unsolvable.
I think this is the right answer. I think that, whenever you're using any computational resource, you have to worry about risk analysis for security. Right. Cloud is a new kind of computational resource, and it comes in lots of flavors. It comes in private, it comes in public, it comes in encrypted, it comes in HIPAA, so on and so forth. Those are all resources. You have to evaluate the cost-benefit analysis associated with using those things and the security risks, privacy, intrusion, intrusion detection, and so on and so forth. That is a problem that exists whether you're clouded or not clouded. Right. And the cloud, it can be a weapon of mass destruction. It's much more scalable, it's much faster, it may be harder to control, so those risks change, but you still have to do the risk analysis.
Rick, you want to jump in? Go on, Sheng, go on. But I know that Rick wants to jump in.
Okay, so I think you can look at it both ways. I think it is fair to say security concerns have probably slowed down the adoption of public cloud. Definitely. Not that public cloud is not being adopted. Amazon's growing faster than ever. But I think in a very positive way, it actually significantly increased the adoption of private cloud. And that's what we see amongst our customers. Many of them would start with using public cloud, like Amazon Web Services. And then sooner or later, they figure out they can't move all the workload onto Amazon for a variety of reasons, security, compliance, privacy. Then they start building private cloud. So it's a driver as well as it's an impeding factor for adoption.
Rick, you were trying to jump in.
He already said it. But no, the point, I think a lot of us sitting here would feel that we can do a better job of securing our thing than the individual business would do. And that's not because we think we're better than anybody, but that's just because our entire life depends on making sure we don't mess that up. And I think one of the unfortunate things is when people sort of surrender back to the private cloud because of security, because private cloud I think is kind of a means to the end insofar as an end customer setting up private cloud a lot of times is a sacrifice. And sometimes it's to say, yep, we're doing Cloud Boss without really explaining what that really means. Other times it's a sacrifice because of security. I agree there are real reasons, most of them being sort of industry or compliance mandated around having to prove which spindle your data is stored on. I mean, we can't answer that because multi-tenancy doesn't let you let you answer that question. So there's these blocking and tackling things that sort of force us out of being able to do certain things in cloud. But there's plenty of cases where we sort of surrender to do private cloud because it's more of what we know, and I think that's unfortunate because it sounds like you've had your light bulb moment with relying on a public cloud provider in terms of the value that can really provide you when you actually go all the way.
Vineet, you were the first one to mention big data. Why is big data so important? I mean, it's November 2011. Going to get more important or less important?
It's more important. It's going to become more and more important as we proceed. What's happening is that we are looking at a data explosion. Everybody's looking for use cases now where you can really use the cloud computing technology. And everybody is making a realization that they're throwing away valuable data. So as people move towards experimentation of it, well, at least let's just gather all of this data. The first challenge they're going to run into is how do I store all these huge amounts of data, right? So and the next problem that they run into is how do I process it now within a time, in an efficient manner. So it's going to continue increasing that. We're sitting here in November 2011. Big data, we've already seen use cases working with customers where, people are started using, cloud as a efficient platform for processing some of this data. We don't have to invest in setting up a cluster of 100 machines, don't have to manage them. You can point in time provision, get your analytics done, get the results back, and be in business.
So it's important because it's a use case.
Yes.
It's a category of use case. Let's think of use cases. That's what an audience always wants to hear. That's what customers always want to hear. So let's try and just arrest people's imagination and attention with what's actually being done. Rick, I'm going to get you to start on this one. What is the single most sensational thing that the Eucalyptus Cloud has enabled to happen?
Excuse me?
Sensational. What has you been just so proud to say, because of what I have helped engender, somebody has been able to do this with it?
Well, it's actually more than one thing. I mean, we're seeing 3 or 4 different use cases, and what's amazing is that this one platform seems to be spawning, different industries or enabling different industries. I'd say today, sort of the thing that we find most surprising is the effectiveness for the cloud to do things like social networking and social gaming. I mean, that sounds obvious, but I promise you a year and a half ago it wasn't. And the reason is, and this is a bias of mine, because we thought that was all going to live in the public cloud. Right? If you're doing social networking, if you're doing social gaming, we thought, the public cloud is absolutely the perfect venue for that. There's not huge privacy concerns. You're going to do your credit card processing off, someplace else or in an encrypted way. You want all of that scale. You want fail forward. You want all of these kinds of things. And what we have found is that there's tremendous traction in private clouds for social games and hybrid clouds.
And what's the reason?
The reason is that, again, these businesses are low-margin businesses, and public and private clouds together are new kinds of resources, new ways to factor the cost and benefit associated with IT, and you want to combine these things. And what we see is that these social gaming companies are extremely creative in the way they think about using public cloud resources and private cloud resources together. Much more creative and forward-thinking than we thought they were going to be.
Sheng, same deal on Cloud Stack? Yeah. What's really rocking your boat?
No, it's a bit of a surprise for me because everyone knows about, like Rick said, social gaming, web services, big data analysis, video encoding. Those are sort of the typical cloud applications, right? But what we saw was that was even before the acquisition, is we saw there were people running desktops on the cloud. And this is sort of counterintuitive because we thought the world was going with web applications and you'd all be using Google Apps, which is a cloud service. But as it turned out, majority of the enterprise and personal productivity applications still runs on the desktop. And cloud is a great place to run it because you can get to it from anywhere, and you can even access it from mobile devices like iPhones and iPads. And as many of you know, Citrix is a desktop company, and I think that definitely created some additional synergy between Cloud.com and Citrix's mainline business.
Who wants to go next? Come on, keep this tone of optimism. I like this. You, and then you, Rick. Paulo.
Well, actually, the latest amazing case I've seen that I never thought possible to see in all of my professional life was a recent customer that we acquired, an agency of the DoD that has more than 10,000 applications written in more than 27 technologies. And they are going through a huge data consolidation process of data centers and migration of these applications. And what they've able to do is in part with our technology and others, is they've created a private cloud setting where they work almost as a marketplace for hundreds of agents, sub-agencies to go there and to look into, to create, to provision their own environments, staging environments. And one of the cases, one of the proof of concepts they did was they ported an application that took about 2 years to build in about 14 weeks into this thing and shoved off about $2 million per year in maintenance costs. And so if you multiply this by thousands of apps, you have hundreds of millions of dollars of savings. And this, again, is not only related to being the cloud, but it's just this flexibility of federating this development into a standardized type of platform where everything is centralized, everything is elastic, and all the control is centralized, provides these huge economies of scale. And we see that in this very large customer.
So cloud first in the federal space is a great use case.
And this federated model of development, that's really astonishing, the way
Rick?
It's doing.
Well, I have the misfortune of having to focus in the application integration world, which is, I don't know, maybe one of the boring, yes, prepare to be underwhelmed, but also perhaps one of the single greatest areas of failed projects. Yeah, that and big ERP implementations, right? I mean, it's really those two that have really get the beat up. So right, yeah, it's not boring when you're the project that failed, right? So you know, my answer is a little bit fundamental, but it's just so important, which is, you know, we approach a customer, someone who's buying into cloud as a cloud strategy, you know, somewhat like the nature of what you described. You know, I've got multiple SaaS apps, cloud services, I've got a lot of on-premise, you know. And we'll go, oh, cool, well, you know, you can go to Boomi, and a lot of our prospects will, you know, build their first integration the first day. And right away, we're like offending this prospect because they're like, Okay, BS is, off the chart. There's no possible way that's true. And then they'll actually try it and say that it's true. And then they'll get up on stage, with me or someone at Boomi and actually talk to people like you and tell you how they did it and they've seen the light. And so for me, I think being able to be a part of a company that is credible, that is able to deliver those claims, because one of the really cool things that cloud does to the provider is it keeps you honest. Because anybody can just go and try what you're saying right now as we're sitting here. They can go and log into any of our sites and go, that's not true. I'm looking at it right here. So I think the fact that credibility that happens, and particularly with integration, where it's just so historically plagued with failure, to be able to go, we actually can really do that quickly, but don't take my word for it. Go and log in and try it yourself. That has really done a lot. And watching the customers go from skeptic to enthusiast has been definitely the most kind of rewarding.
So it's not boring anymore, Brian. He's turned it into something electrifying.
How did I do? Was that?
He recants.
Thank you. Awesome.
He immediately recants. All right. Now here's a thought. We're at what are we saying? 9th Cloud Expo. Do you remember I said I was going to reveal who was here at First Cloud? Put up your hand if you're at First Cloud Expo. No, if you were at First Cloud Expo, which was, I think, in San Jose. Anyone here in the audience attended the first ever Cloud Expo? It was rich. I thought you weren't going to reveal it.
No, I was just looking to see.
No, I see.
Sorry,
there you are.
I was.
It's good. Because the next question is a numerical one. I mean, because you've been acquired, that's it, the whole cloud.com thing, it's now sold to someone else, right? Someone else can play that game. You still saying Eucalyptus Cloud?
Yes, of course.
Right? Well, Dell Boomi, not so much cloud in the name. I mean, it's an obvious question. We're on 9th Cloud Expo, so when do we stop? So I just want a number, that's all. Just want 7 numbers, just so I can, I'm going to note them down, and if you don't say the right one, you'll never come again. How many?
30.
30?
It depends on how many you're having a year.
Oh, good. You see, smart people. Okay. So we're going to qualify the question. At the run rate of 3 a year. Sorry, I should say that. Right. On your marks, get set, go.
60.
60? Wow. Hang on. Then break that down into years. 20 more years of Cloud Expo. Jesus. I'm going home. Right. That's too big a number.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 10 more years.
10 more
Easily.
years of Cloud Expos. I wish I hadn't started this. Vineet, absurd, right? It's going to change to Big Data Expo. I know that's what you're going to say.
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say 10 or maybe more years.
Oh.
But there's going to be changes.
For the love of God.
Cloud is going to become something.
Someone come up with a smaller number. Rick, what's the number? What's your number?
Come on, we're just getting started. We got 10 more years of this, right?
I should be so happy. Paulo.
If you don't change the name, it's going to be about 10 years. But if you change the name, it's going to be 2 or 3 to get the next hype.
Okay. If we do, that's interesting. So don't change. Steady on the tiller. All right.
I would have actually cranked that number down. I say 24.
24 years?
You got 5 more years.
Oh, okay. 5 more years. Actually, I think you might.
5 more years. Unless you change the name, it's going to fracture at some point. Right?
Bifurcate.
There's only going to be so much. Especially, there's a lot of discussion here that is at the infrastructure level. It's all about the systems and everything. It's going to become more about the software. It's going to become more about the data. Yes. And then at some point, you're inevitably going to fracture apart into other conferences, possibly that you'd be running equally as large, but they might not be called Cloud Expo anymore.
Brian?
I don't know. 5 years. 5 years. I mean, I think it's going to change. I actually agree with what he's saying. I mean, I think that, cloud, at the end of the day, cloud, even though people don't think about it maybe this way, is underlying clouds are data centers and networks that are, that are housing infrastructure, or housing apps, but it's a utility-based model for delivering services to the business, and we always got to remember that. And if it fractures, it could be more along the line of vertical, where this just becomes commonplace, where really solid infrastructure, like I said, Equinix provides a lot of these houses to the clouds. That just becomes a key part of the utility of really the digital commerce.
See how he's snuck in the
yeah,
Equinix
got
there?
to.
So
Yeah.
crafty.
Marketing guys will be happy.
Well,
but I think I see that it could shift more towards app focus because that's what the business cares about. They really don't care about the utility. They want to plug it in, flip on the switch, and it works.
All
Give
right,
me
well, look,
value.
we have a huge opportunity here because although there's 7 of these guys here, there's like 7 million out there. So we have to do a little straw poll to go back to the afternoon program. Gartner, as we know, running that wonderful hype cycle, and they're always looking at cloud computing. I don't know if you've seen it recently, but I think most of the dots, although they are also bifurcating it, I think we're right on the top of the peak of inflated expectations. Am I not right? Which we all know is the one followed by the trough of disillusionment and all that terrible bad stuff, and all these guys will be out of a job, but the ones who have been acquired don't care because they all had shares. So I'm actually just quite interested. I mean, it's early days yet. We're only halfway through the day, let alone halfway through the show, which we're not. So I'm just going to ask the audience by a show of hands, if you raise, let's say you need exercise this, so put your laptops down. If you raise one hand, it is to inform these CTOs that as a result of this power panel, you believe that it's true that cloud computing is at the peak of inflated expectations and is going to crash. So that's one hand, all right? That's the easy one. If you raise both hands, it's because actually they've emboldened you to think that Gartner are wrong, that it sounds like cloud computing is more or less just getting going, like early days. I'm not saying where I stand on this. I'll tell you afterwards. So I just want to see, by a show of hands, one hand if you think that, dudes, it's going to end any moment. So this is the first. This is the call for who thinks it's at the peak of inflated expectations. There's a hand. There really is only one. Are you the owner? No, there's some hands. Okay, there's one brave guy right at the back. Okay, this is very interesting. Now, this could be more, and one there. Very good. So let's just actually see if there's going to be a Mexican wave of two-handers. Raise both your hands if you believe, on the contrary, that this is really just warm. Oh, my goodness, look at this. Keep raising them. Keep raising them. Oh, look at that. I wish we had a photo. Oh, there are some photos being. Please tweet that photo. You'll have to explain why all these perfectly intelligent human beings are sitting in the middle of the day raising both their hands at Cloud Expo. I'll let you do that. But before we do that and tweet that shot, let's thank our long-suffering panel. Let's thank Rich Wolski. Let's thank Sheng Liang. Let's thank Vineet Tyagi. Let's thank Rick Nucci. Let's thank Paulo Rosado. Let's thank Brian. Let's thank everybody. Let's thank the world. Thank you for joining us. That's, I believe, the biggest audience we've ever seen for a lunchtime power panel. I'm sorry if you've gone without eating because of that. Be back for a CEO power panel this evening, I think. Yes, this evening. Same time, same place, and then all the usual things this afternoon. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Don't thank me. I'm condemned to do it for 20 more years.